In the delivery room, Gogol is gifted a beautiful hardcover book. His father reflects that his son is a lucky boy to already be the owner of books. Many times throughout the book, Gogol is unaware of his fortunate circumstances. How similar do you think your childhood was to your parents?
My parents were in Vietnam when the Vietnam War was a thing. I don't really know exactly what the time frame was or how old they were. My dad immigrated here when he was like 20. He remembers like walking out and like seeing like dead bodies on the street, which is something that I fortunately have not had to experience. And I think it's just quite interesting to see like how they've had to like suffer through such like a traumatic experience. Well, very much like I live a very fortunate life.
For me, my mom grew up in rural Mexico, tiny village. She had 4 other siblings and she grew up on a farm, and she grew up in a 2-parent household. And then compare that to I'm growing up in a country where we have no family. It's just my mom and my older brother. We're staying in this tiny 1-bedroom apartment in the middle of it's like semi-rural Kansas.
So much childhood and more teenagehood, but he started coming to Chicago when he was like 11 or so, and then he was back and forth on the train from Mexico to Chicago. And not speaking Spanish, and no one wanting to speak Spanish to him, even though there was such a high Hispanic presence at the middle school, because they didn't just want to talk to the new kid, they didn't want to speak Spanish, they didn't want to be seen speaking Spanish, so he had to like quickly adapt and eventually learn English. But he had not only like the isolation of Chicago, but he was never fully present in Mexico either, so he was kind of like in this limbo. And that's obviously the opposite of me. I've always lived in Dallas.
As children, Gogol and Sonia packed the shopping cart with American junk food and sugary cereals. Did you ever prefer American food to the food at home? First time I ever had anyone sleep over, it was my 2nd grade best friend. And my favorite food at the time was mint. And I was so excited for her to come home and try it. And I was like, you're not gonna believe it. And she sees the food and she like pokes it with her fork and she's like, why is it squishy? And like, I don't know, at 8 years old, I didn't really have an answer for her. I don't know the anatomy of a cow. And so she looks at it and she's like, I don't wanna eat that. Like, she didn't even try it. I remember my mom had like slaved away in the kitchen making this, like preparing this meal, because this was a big deal the first time I had a friend over. And I didn't eat a bite of the soup. Whenever I go to like Malia's house, we have like meatloaf or we'll have lasagna. And then I just kind of felt regretful and I was like, why can't we have normal food? Yeah.
I have a really similar story, since I used to take a little thermos and then my mom would fill it with soup and then I'd take that to school. And like one time, some kid told me that it smelled funny, and that was it. And wanting like to take mac and cheese to school and not wanting anything that my mom made.
I think in general, sometimes I do like prefer like, I don't know, eating out than like eating like Vietnamese food at home. I think
growing up, Gogol has 2 birthdays, an American birthday and a Bengali birthday. Are there other ways in the lives of first-gen kids where they have 2 sort of like double lives?
Another sense of duality that's like completely different is when it comes to religion and the way that I have to act whenever I'm around family in Mexico. If I'm like calling my godmother, I have to be like, oh yeah, you know, excited for when you come. Primero Dios. Hopefully God lets everything happen right or whatever.
When Gogol's teacher gives background information on the Russian author, Gogol becomes paranoid and self-conscious. In a class, perhaps your history class, has there ever been a touchy subject that was vulnerable for you because of your background or identity? I think in every like POC community, there's a sense of anti-Blackness, and there's sort of like degrees, like, you know, the fairer you are, the more affluent you are. And as a child, you don't recognize this. And I remember I mentioned in a class discussion, I said that my mom had me using bleaching cream when I was in middle school. And then when I found out what it was, I got like upset with her because I was like, do you not think I'm pretty or something? And so I just stopped taking it. And anyways, I mentioned it during class, and then Miss Malone goes, that's really sad. And I was like, is it? And so I remember the class just got quiet and I was like, oh my God, is that like trauma?
In 8th grade, I was taking a Spanish class, right? And it was like the native speakers, right? Something happens, right? And then I get to speak Spanish and people are surprised. I'm very white passing. And so for people to be surprised and to look at me and go like, you speak Spanish, question mark? And to have like their expectations kind of subverted because I speak Spanish.
Over their high school years, both Gogol and Sonia express rebellion. Gogol gets a fake ID and smokes while Sonia dyes her clothes black and threatens to bleach a strand of her hair. Have you ever felt that one of your hobbies or interests was purely reactionary? I grew up in a predominantly white elementary school in Kansas, and then I came to Dallas when I was 12 years old, which is the hell years, middle school years. And so I went to a middle school that had a 98.8% Hispanic demographics, and I felt like I was alien, I didn't belong. And so because I felt that I didn't belong, I thought I had to look that way too, and I wore combat boots every day of 6th grade because I thought people wouldn't recognize me if I wasn't wearing them. I thought it was part of my identity. And so I think once I got to 8th grade and I got to know these girls outside of their their appearance, I got to know stories about their families, and I just realized how similar our lives were, and that it doesn't come down to what music you listen to or what clothes you have. And so I think looking back on it, a lot of my style has been reactionary, and I think the older I got, the more I realized that that's silly. People will recognize you if you're not wearing combat boots.
I currently am thinking of pre-med. Obviously it can change, but I think part of myself rebelled against pursuing that career just because I hate being a stereotype, and that's pretty much what the stereotype is, wow, another Asian going into pre-med. And there's this phase in my life where I would argue with my parents about maybe becoming a singer. The idea of maybe having an option, and I'm really nervous sometimes that I'm following a stereotype where I'm doing this thing because my parents want to and not because I want to. And even though I logically know hey, this is actually something you're interested in, I guess my rebellion was me fighting against my parents, being what if I want to become a singer?
I guess for me, it's just, I don't think I've ever done or acted in a way that was truly reactionary, because my parents have just been super chill for a lot of stuff. But because they've been super chill, I feel like I've taken a lot of their expectations and just kind of
amplified them.
Yeah.
Gogol's parents encourage him to pursue an engineering degree, but instead Gogol becomes an architect. Do you feel that most parents of first-gen students hold similar views?
Part of the reason why parents want you to go into high-paying jobs is because for them it's they've for at least for my parents they've suffered a lot getting here. For me to go into a job maybe engineering, if that were that's a stable job, that can make a lot of money. And I think part of it's they want stability and they want you to not have to struggle like they did, which is
Absolutely, I completely agree. And this might be a little just my dad, but I feel maybe it also applies to some first-gen experience where your parents want you to go to college and they want you to have the experience that they never had the chance to get. But with that comes a little, I don't know, it sounds immature, and I feel weird saying this because it's your old
Just say it out loud, see how it feels.
Just jealousy that you're going to get out and do this thing that they never got to. And my dad's always I would kill to have the chance that you have to change the world. And yeah, so whenever we went to go visit a college, the way he was as in awe as I was. And I feel he also let himself imagine oh, I get to visit my daughter here, I get to experience this here. My dad plays tennis with a couple of guys, and he tells me that oh yeah, none of their kids have ever gone to Ivy League.
I love that for your dad.
And he emphasizes the way that all their families come from money, and yet they're not going to the school that you're going to. And we don't have money, and and it's just a thing of superiority with my dad. Not superiority, but just
no, because
I'm a Mexican and my daughter's
I feel there's two branches of first-gen parents. There's obviously the ones that want you to pursue a STEM field and get a really high-paying job, and then there's also the ones that are just so thankful that you're in a country where you can date, where you can get a job, where you can earn your own money. For my mom, a big game changer was buying her first car and being able to drive herself around. And whenever I ask her, do you miss Mexico? She says, no, I would never be able to, drive myself to places. I always had to walk. She'll talk about, how there's, clean running water and, plumbing and stuff. And so I think there's, two sects of, first-gen parents, the ones high earning career, a big tech or something like that. And then there's the other ones that are just glad that you're able to grow up in a country where like there's certain freedoms and it's not about how much money you make or how smart you are. It's just the fact that you're here.
Pretty much all immigrant parents subscribe to the American dream, like whether that's like getting your first car, or whether that's like becoming a millionaire. Like they're
one of them.
One of the two. Like there's just always like it's like that idea like, oh, in America
anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
And also with that second sect, my mom is very similar to your mom in that
Zacatecas girls be like, they're from the same village. For like context, continue.
Just that like they don't miss being there. Like all they wanted was to get out, to come to America and to have the freedom and fulfill the American dream. And that's so much different from Ashima, who desperately misses India.
She feels bad for her kids. She's like, man, you have to grow up here. Even in India, Gogol's parents are considered foreign because of their time spent abroad. To what extent do you think your parents would be considered foreign in their countries of origin? I can start that one off. So my mom hasn't been in Mexico for 2 decades, and one of my first memories of her kind of missing Mexico that I remember, I was in this like Hispanic grocery store, El Supermercado in Kansas, and we were buying meat for tamales, and she was looking at the meat and she was like, it's not as good as in Mexico. Like the beans aren't as good, like the rice isn't as good, the produce isn't as good. And I remember being like maybe like 9 or 11, something like that, and just thinking, why are you telling me this? I'll never be able to experience it for myself. And that night when I took a bite into my tamale, I was like, it's not as good. And it's like, you have no frame of reference, hello? Seeing how she could miss the food, such like a trivial thing, and then to compare it to like, you haven't seen your mom in 2 decades, you haven't seen your sisters in 2 decades. She used to have a dog named Oso, and you know, I mean, he's long dead now, but still, she hasn't seen like her land in forever. And I think I got home one time a few months ago, kind of recently, and I saw her, and she was in her bedroom, and she had YouTube playing on the TV, which she gets really excited about. She's not big on tech, but this is a huge moment for her. And she was watching this montage of little pictures of like the church, the plaza in her village in Mexico, and she got so excited about it, she like sat me down, and as like the different images were like passing by, she'd like tell me stories about the place. And it was funny because like she didn't realize she could pause the video, and so she'd like say it really fast. She's like, no, you're gonna miss it. And I was like, Mama, we can rewind. It's cool. But anyways, yeah, just seeing how excited she got about it and realizing that she had a life before me and she had it in this place that she is so far away from, but like through the internet, through YouTube, like she can connect back to it. It's a little bit sad. It's like bittersweet. I'm happy that she has that, but sad that that's the only thing that she has and that visiting isn't a possibility for her. So I think as far as like foreignness, I feel like a lot of the things that she loved, they're sort of like temporal. Like, you know, the church isn't as beautiful as it used to be when she was there because it's worn down. You know, when she gets there, her sisters and her brothers are older. The animals, like the pets that she had, are dead. The food, I don't know. I haven't tried it, but you know what I mean? Like it would be a new foreign land for her. And I think, well, at least the United States, I'm so impressed every time I think about how she drives and she like can't read the signs. I mean, like, you know, Spanish and English have the same letters, but she doesn't know what anything means. Like, she knows the stop sign and she knows, like, you know, she can drive. It's safe. But she just, like, doesn't know the language. And I just can't imagine, like, driving around, seeing street names that you can't pronounce, seeing storefronts that you can't pronounce either, and living in this land where, like, everything is all foreign to her, and she doesn't speak the language, but, like, she's here nonetheless. So I think she's, like, caught between the two worlds.
My parents recently just returned back from Vietnam, and I think it's quite interesting because they kind of got homesick, like, for here, like, which is, like I mean, partially because I think also just because, like, they talk about how, like, I guess the difference is, like, they were like, no, the food is better here, which is interesting because it's, like, the food originated
the
from where,
MSG, the GMOs.
But they're, like, then they miss, like, they're, like, oh, yeah, everything's better here. I guess, like, I don't know, it's quite interesting because, like, in contrast to, like, your mom, like, my parents are like, no, like, let's go back to America, it's better here, like, everything's better. But just,
Party
like,
in the USA.
Yeah, and it's, like, the food originated from Vietnam, but you're saying it's, like,
Who's gonna
worse?
tell them?
Yeah.
When Max meets Gogol's parents, Gogol is precautious and overall uncomfortable with the situation. Have you ever been hesitant for someone to meet your parents? So I went on a date, and the guy was very nice. We'll call him Obama. But I'm sitting on this
Actually,
porch.
you went on a date with Barack Obama.
The real Barack Obama, if you didn't know. Me and Obama are sitting in this little garden area in front of the half-price books, and my mom shows up, and I tell him, like, hey, I gotta go. And he says, oh, sweet, can I meet your mom? And I was kind of like, hold your horses. Why would I let you meet my mom? Like, nobody meets my mom. It's sort of like I don't see a purpose to it. My mom doesn't speak English. He doesn't speak Spanish. And so I was like, you two are just gonna look at each other and, like, smile and wave, like, you know, this could be any stranger, like, off the street. Like, I didn't see a purpose to it. And I remember when we went on a second date and he dropped me off at home, again, he asked, like, can I meet your mom? And, you know, from, like, a girl's perspective, like, oh, he's so sweet, he's, like, in touch with his, like, family side or whatever. But I was also, like, I felt so rude. I was just like, she doesn't really take kindly to boys, so, you know, can't do that.
I think it's, like, something, like, very official about meeting the parents. Also, like, with the cultural difference, like, with the boyfriend, his parents are like people of color, but like they're a lot more Americanized than my parents. So
I don't know. I kind of related to Gogol in that little chapter where he's talking about Maxine meeting his parents and just like the way like his mom slaved away to make all that food for her. And I don't remember if like he was kind of upset at Maxine's like the way she acted. I'm pretty sure she was like fine. She ate everything and it was cool.
He was embarrassed that his mom had like put such an effort in.
Yeah.
So I feel the opposite. I am like always super happy with like the way my parents treat guys I date. They're pretty cool about it.
Yeah.
Usually, my mom's a little weird because
Tradition.
she's extremely traditionalist, and meeting my parents is a thing where like I get so cringed out and like embarrassed for the person I'm dating.
First of all, your dad is so funny and your mom is so sweet. I love them. Continue.
I'll let them know.
I feel like white moms are a lot more like chill.
When I met Tyler's mom for the first time, she was like, "You're going to Dartmouth," and then she hugged me. It's like a huge bear hug. I was like, "Whoa, pandemic," but we're vaccinated. But like, yeah.
No, it's like I just can't like I don't know like it's so casual. Like I'm meeting like my friends who like have like white moms. It's so like.
No, you start having conversations about the weirdest things. I
And
think
then,
I
like-
talked to like Carrie's mom about lava cake and what brand of like trash bags they use.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm like very much like like very things it's structured. Like I'm like I'll like be very like respectful and make sure like I'm in like my lane. But it's so weird because when I interact with like my friends' white moms, it's,
Oh my
like,
god,
very
and they're
different.
like, call me by my first name. I'm like, I will not be doing that. But, you know.
Yeah.
Last question that we had, it was a lot less structured, but it was kind of about how Ashima and Ashoke, they had an arranged marriage, which like none of us have any experience with, but from what I've read, arranged marriages are all about patience and a commitment to the marriage rather than love, and so trying to nurture the marriage and make sure that like it's sustainable and stuff. And the qualities that they look for in people, so like Ashima has to like recite this poem to show that like she's educated, and then it gives like a description of Ashima that she's like 5'5" or 5'3", which is like tall for them, so like that's like desirable children. And sort of like the way that we look at love, and it's more like how do they make you feel. And then there's also like the criticism of like feelings are pretty fleeting, so can wake up one day loving someone, the next you don't feel that way anymore. And so just sort of like how our parents' love lives have been a lot different than ours.
I mean, also like in like Vietnamese / like Catholic, because I'm Catholic, the cultures, it's a huge, like even with my dad like got divorced, and like my mom isn't hiding it from my grandma, but she doesn't like, and like it's not like a big thing that we talk about.
It's taboo.
It's kind of taboo because like my mom married like a previously married man, which is like very weird, I guess, in like a culture. But I feel like hearing from like my friends who are like white, it's like like step parents, normal, like that's normal, and like for like my culture, that's like a very big deal.
I was gonna touch on like the permanency of arranged marriage versus you have a way out. American marriages is just hit the divorce button.
And there's also like the difference in intimacy, how like you'll hear about like date nights and stuff for like and it's like more like American white families, and then there's no such thing like for us, like maybe like they'll go on a date once in like 3 months, and I think the closest thing to intimacy that I've seen between my mom and my stepdad is whenever we're driving, and sometimes my mom will like lay her hand over my stepdad's.
But like there was a moment where my mom was kind of clinging onto my dad. She's like, "Don't leave me," like as a joke, right? But it's like, I guess like I forgot like they have that.
You have a sense of humor.
Yeah,
you
and,
flirt.
and it's like, because like I do that, and I'm like, you do the same thing that I currently do in mine.
Yeah.
It's like it's so weird, but also like in a way like like my parents don't have date night, and I think I realized date night was a thing when I watched like a Disney Channel show or something. They were on a date, and the parents were, and I was like, wait, like what? Like I think like presence is like just like being there for the person, like like they're not in their office, and they're just working next to each other, talking once in a while. Like it's like it's like being in the same room.
Study date.
Yeah, like they're literally just in the same room. Like they do this all the time. And, like that's like their way of being affectionate, which is like.
Closing thoughts. It's weird to be first gen in a foreign country because your parents can't really guide the way because they don't have the same experiences that you're gonna have, and it's kind of scary to imagine being half belonging to one world and half belonging to the other. And I think reading books like The Namesake, I had a lump in my throat the entire time that I read it because all of it is just so relatable, and it's kind of like unimaginable how relatable it is because like Gogol's Bengali, nobody here is Bengali. And so it's interesting to see how these feelings are universal, but maybe like the exact details, vary, but they're all universal feelings, so it helps you feel less alone. In conclusion, thank you, Ms. Weber, for letting us read the